You're listening to Coding Blocks, Episode 10. Subscribe to us and leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, and more using your favorite podcasting app.
And check us out at codingblocks.net where you can find the show notes and examples and some discussion and other stuff.
Send your feedback, questions, and rants and comments to comments@codingblocks.net and follow us on Twitter @codingblocks and on Facebook at facebook.com/codingblocks. And with that, welcome to Coding Blocks. I'm Alan Underwood.
I'm Joe Zach.
And I'm Michael Outlaw.
Michael is getting ready to start us off with some news.
Yeah, so if you haven't been paying attention in the .NET world, the Build event was in April, and The Verge put up a great video on the Build keynote speech in 7 minutes. So we'll include a link to that. But it was an interesting take on the Build keynote. Did you watch it? What did you think of it?
Yeah, I did. The keynote speeches in general at conferences are always a little bit fluffy, so it's not really my thing. But I did like that I could watch it in 7 minutes.
Yeah, that part was nice.
And I want to mention that we actually got that from, I'm not sure how to say the name, Patrick Dahlin. So thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, it was the only thing I wish that they had included more developer friendly stuff in that keynote or in that 7 minute video.
Yeah,
it was very Windows Phone, Windows Desktop OS centric.
Okay,
but I'm glad I didn't spend 3 hours watching it.
Yeah, I give you that.
Well, there's that.
Wasn't the keynote 3 hours?
Unless you were there, then you'd have been happy to sit there.
Man, those sometimes the chairs at those conferences, man, it's worse than an airplane. Like I'm a big dude, man. I'm up in some people's space. That's not comfortable for me.
So the next piece of news is I got called out on Twitter, yes, for not having examples of my mixed link love. So I guess I'm going to have to buckle down and put together.
You got some homework, my friend.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. So I need to put together a blog post on how to mix the standard notation with lambdas and all that. So, and it won't be hard to do. I guess I just completely forgot. So thanks for calling me out there, Pascal Coder. I will try and get something together for that soon.
Don't worry, Pascal. He deserved it, I'm sure. All right, so we also got some more feedback. I don't even know how you would start with that one. Lee Inglestone.
Yeah, you see, there's a lot of E's there.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of E's, and that's what totally threw me off because I'm like Lee
Linglestone.
So how do you say the int32 max value or the int64 max value?
Yeah, I thought this was really cool because when you just see N32 and N64, they don't really seem that far apart. You don't really get the scope of how different and how much bigger 64 is.
Well, I know. Like, so even just today, I had a conversation where we were talking about the max value of N32, and I'm just like, yeah, 2 billion something. I never bothered to go on, but
right.
There's a ManchesterDeveloper.com blog entry where it actually like wrote it out,
and that's actually Lee's blog. So
it's 2,147,483,647 is the int32 max value. Don't confuse that with our Google Plus account.
And that's 16 words. Holy moly.
All right, now hold on now, because I got to do the int64 one. Hold on. 9 quintillion.
Quintillion.
What did I say? Oh, yeah, you're right. Let me start over. 9 quintillion. I'm making up my own numbers here. 9 quintillion. 223 quadrillion, 372 trillion, 36 billion, 854 million, 775,807. That is the amount of money in Bill Gates' account right now.
Int64 max value.
Yeah, I tried counting the words, but I ran out of fingers and toes.
So it's quite a bit more. It's not double. It's a lot.
So yeah, that's a great way to hear the difference between those numbers. So thanks, Lee.
Yep, that was fun.
And also, we want to mention this was kind of a nice one. I'm sure everyone's worked with some Linux guys before, and we're always hearing about how awesome open source and Linux those things are awesome. Don't get me wrong, but it felt a little good. Maybe I'm a little guilty, feeling a little guilty here, but it felt a little good to see some of the Linux people that I know get kind of smacked down with Heartbleed. So,
wow, I think you're a little too excited.
yeah,
about
I'm coming off on the wrong side of this. I know. But
totally. Like the whole internet
was just-
suffers, and you're over there like cheering.
I don't normally get to say, "Ha, Windows was safe," and so this is one of those times when I got to kind of wave that flag. So yeah, Heartbleed. It was actually a terrible thing though. I really shouldn't be talking about it.
Yeah, that was rough. And anybody who doesn't know about it needs to go look it up right now.
Especially if you run a website.
Yeah, you need to know about this. So.
And it wasn't just Linux. It was just anything that's really using certain versions of OpenSSL, and you could kind of get some secrets from servers, which is really bad, especially since there wasn't a really good way of knowing if someone got your secrets. So there were a lot of certs changing hands, and a lot of work happened in a couple days there in early April.
Yep.
So there was some good that came out of this, though. Well, I mean, if you got to look for the silver lining, because not only did the entire internet update their certificates at the same time. So last week on April 24th, there was a new initiative started by a bunch of the major players called the Core Infrastructure Initiative. And the idea being that all these major companies would contribute money in to help support these smaller, underfunded open source initiatives, so that maybe problems like this can be avoided in the future.
Right.
So silver lining in there somewhere.
Yep. And also, speaking of preventative measures and security, Microsoft put out a really nice threat modeling tool. And if you've ever tried to do any sort of threat modeling without an official threat modeling tool, you'll know it's kind of hard to find and get the shapes right for.
You can't create those stupid arcs.
That's right. So Microsoft put out a free tool. It's really awesome. We talked about that a little bit in episode 4. So make sure you check that out. We'll have a link in the show notes.
It is quite nice. And the sad part is I had just finished up some threat modeling literally the week before it came out.
Yeah.
And then Microsoft taunts me with it, like, oh yeah, remember all those stencils that you had to create by hand? Yeah, here you go, buddy.
And now you can put up with everyone asking, why don't you just use the tool?
Right.
Yeah, why do you I don't understand why you reinvented everything.
Also want to mention, I know we're always harping on you guys for reviews, and we actually got a really nice review on Stitcher from Johnny Moniker, so want to say thank you very much for that, Johnny Moniker.
I'm not convinced that's his real name.
And also, so while I may not have written an article about, how to mix Lambda with regular, query notation and link, I did put together a couple of blog posts. One was on database schema thoughts for multiple types of products. So really, if you want to go take a look at this was me basically just thinking through some database layout for doing potentially like a review type layout or application. And there were some neat things that I ran into, and just thinking through some of the scalability problems and actual UI problems that you face when you start trying to build things that are flexible. So maybe this will be something that would help you out in what you're doing, and maybe you have some suggestions, and if so, love to hear your comments on it. So we'll leave that link in the show notes for you. And Outlaw also wrote something that he's going to talk about.
Yeah. So I put up a new entry called Reflection of Control. I was really trying to come up with a better name, and that was about as good as I got.
Oh, that's awesome.
But so the idea was just trying to, in short, you have a brownfield application. You'd like to introduce some loose coupling, into your application, and for one reason or another, dependency, bringing in a dependency injection just isn't going to maybe work with your time schedule or whatnot. But you still want to use the intent of what that would do for you. And so, I call it reflection of control. I wanted to call it poor man's inversion of control, but that was already taken. And so that's where the of control portion came in. But it does use reflection as the mechanism for finding the classes, but it is an exercise in loosely coupled classes. So maybe some listeners will read it and give some feedback on it. Maybe have some ideas on how to expand on it, or maybe they'll find some use for it.
Yeah, I actually really like the name. I keep thinking it's almost like Metallica is the band names, like Reflection of Control. It just sounds cool. Like, man, you should buy that domain name.
and nothing else matters. So one other article I threw together not so recently, was link lazy loading, and just talking about how it can be one of those gotchas if you're new to link. So that might help some people out there who struggle with understanding why after they've put in a link command they don't have any data out. So you can go check that out. Also, we'll have that in the show notes. And I do want to mention as well that Joe also has started writing about 20 different blog posts. I think he'll finish them up at some point.
Oh no, I don't finish them. I thought I write the drafts and you guys finish them.
Okay, so I might actually go in and like tweak a few of them so that he'll have he'll literally triple the content on our site as soon as they get published. So.
I think that might be what happened with Alan's Lambda and Link article.
Absolutely, that's just hanging out there in the ether somewhere.
I would be surprised if it was.
I'm totally making that up, Pascal Coder. You were totally right to call him out on it.
That was pretty good though. All right, so getting on to the topic of the show today, we're basically going to be going over this thing called Roslyn that you may have heard about, and some of the features coming out in C#6. So I'm going to let Joe, because I'm pretty certain he put this title in here. He can introduce it.
That's funny, because this is totally a title that Michael would do, and I'm sure he would have if I hadn't beaten him to it. But the title we've got here in the show notes is "Pour Some Sugar on Me."
And for all you people from back in the 80s, you know exactly what that...
So are you trying to insinuate that I'm back from the 80s?
Well, you know what? It's
like
weird.
What the?
Yeah, that's kind of one
what
of your things.
The actual what?
But see, I'm the one who's actually putting the "Pour Some Sugar on Me" and referencing Metallica, and Alan here was singing "Cherry Pie" before the show. So I don't know, man. You're kind of losing some ground.
Dude,
there.
I'm on Miley Cyrus and Justin Bieber. What are you talking about?
Yeah, Outlaw's actually over there twerking during the show. That's fairly disturbing.
Outlaw did give us the history of Cherry Pie, though.
He did.
So we'll have to have a link to that in the show notes.
So yeah, with that, I guess we'll just get started on some of the features coming up, and we'll do our best to tell you whether or not they're actually done and you can download the source code and check them out, or whether they're planned. Now
this is going to be we're going to discuss every single feature period of the ever.
Yeah, why not? I mean, we may not go deep into them because some of them
actually joking. We're not.
There's a lot. And there's like 20 or something too, so you'll probably have to excuse us a little bit as we kind of tab around to figure out which ones.
There's more than 20.
Ambiguous. Well, I don't know. The numbers are messed up and nobody fixed them.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of shocking.
There's definitely more than 20. That's the point I was trying to make, though, is that there's a whole bunch of features.
Yeah, there are.
We're not going to be able to get to all of them.
So we basically grabbed the ones that we could find examples of, and we're going to talk about them.
It was really difficult to find some information on what all of these features were. Like, you could find little one-liners on some of them, but to try to find actual details into it, it was more difficult than I expected it to be.
Yeah, we actually had to do some homework. It was kind of ridiculous. The examples were not clear in some situations.
So why don't we start off with one of the new features coming out, primary constructors.
Yeah, I actually really like this one. So I don't know what it is about constructors, but maybe it's just I don't know where they belong in the method. If you're trying to be singly responsible, then you've got this weird method that's next to your one method in your class, and so it just takes up a lot of room. And usually you're doing something simple like taking some variables and setting them to some properties. And this primary constructor, it basically lets you slap the parentheses and arguments up there next to your class name. So the example we've got here is class point parentheses int x int y. And I think that's pretty rad.
Yeah, and to add on top of it, one of the really cool things is that Michael and I were discussing earlier is that gives you your primary constructor, but it also sets up your properties as well inside the constructor. So you don't have to, right below your class definition, then put all your properties. You can actually have it auto-create those things for you and be ready for the rest of your class. So it kind of does everything in this one method call. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it really cleans up a lot of boilerplate.
Yeah, it does.
And it definitely creates those variables. It wouldn't do you a lot of good to just, have the signature of the constructor there without actually doing anything.
Well, I thought that it didn't create the properties unless you declared a access modifier on them. In your
that's
class. Correct.
So
in your point int x int y example, you're not declaring the property for it. You're just defining that
those are your constructor parameters. Yeah,
these are some member variables that are going to get set.
Well, no,
they're parameter. They're what Alan said. They are the parameters coming into the constructor that you could then use in the class to say that this property capital X equals this lowercase x that was in my my class line. So if I have class point int lower x, comma int lower y, and in my property I have int upper x, I can say it equals that lower x, but there's not automatically a property being created for it unless in the class declaration line
you put public.
I added a access modifier to it, and then it would.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was missing. So if you add like the public keyword on there, then you get what I was talking about, where it adds in as like member variables.
So my take on this though is like it seems like for a small class like this is going to be some nice little extra sugar, right? But if I could see this getting out of hand where, if you have a half dozen different properties, then this could just get gross. If you're defining all of that in line, it just seems like it would be a bad form from a coding standards point of view if you were to do too much with it. Not to mention if you were inheriting a class and then implementing several interfaces. I could just see now that class line getting out of control.
Oh, that's so many different reasons to change, though. So maybe at that point that class is doing a little too much.
Well, okay, I won't argue with you that. I won't argue that. But my point though is like it and that's why I said for small classes.
I didn't realize we were talking about reality. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. I probably should have prefaced that.
The one thing that I'm not real clear on with this, though, is the primary constructor. What about classes that have multiple constructors? Like, so this is the only thing that bothers me about it is if you have the primary constructor, which is what we're talking about here, and you have the couple parameters coming in, you can define your properties in there. Well, what if you have other constructors for the class that have different inputs?
There'd just be a different signature there.
Different signature, but how are the properties getting set up?
They're not.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why you'd have that other signature handling it.
So, but that's my whole point. If you called this other constructor, would you still have to have all your public string, first name?
Well, this is where I see this getting out of control. Is someone will go, oh, well, you know what? I should add this in to this primary constructor. Let me add in, int z now, so that I can also call that one. And oh crap, I need an int a. And a B, C, D.
Yeah, and then some of your variables are declared here, and some are other places. It just gets kind of weird. So this is definitely something that's nice for light classes, but once you start getting heavy, the benefit starts to fall away.
I definitely see it light class being nice sugar there.
Yeah.
So,
who wants to do the read-only auto properties?
I think we all do. We're all super excited.
I think Michael's
about
the king
this.
of read-only.
Yeah, I mean, this is just like the read-only auto properties, this is just adding on, isn't it, to the primary constructors? Because we already had the ability to do read-only properties, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now this ability to assign it from the primary constructor, or am I thinking of this wrong?
No, I think that's right, because you can basically say that it only has a get on it inside your primary, right? If I remember right when we were looking through.
Well, that's what the read-only portion would be, is if you only provided a get to it, but this is where you're assigning a value to it on that same line. So you're able to say like a get colon, and then outside of your brackets, say equals whatever.
That's the initializers. That's a little bit different, right?
No, not from the reading that I saw. It seemed like it was an add-on to the primary constructor usage. So in the primary constructor usage that we just talked about, right? We said something along the lines of class point and in parentheses int x, int y. And then on your where you define that member variable or the property, you would have like int x and then in curly braces get colon and then equals your lowercase x from your class line. That's the read-only auto property that's being set there, but because it's the auto property because you're not defining a member variable for that property.
Okay.
But it's read-only because you're only providing a get, but at the same time you're initializing it all at the same time, and it seems It seems like it's very related to the primary constructor feature.
Well, it actually sounds more like the next one that we were going to talk about, which is the property initializers. The auto property initializers, it sounds like it's the same thing, except you're just setting the get.
Oh, you know what? No, I'm thinking of this totally wrong.
Yeah, that's
the whole idea, though, is that because you don't have the member variable for it, how do you initialize that value for it?
Yes.
And this is how you could do that.
Right, and Damien G has actually got, on DamienG.com, I assume that's his name, has got a really nice post on probable
I thought it was
C-sharp
Damien
features.
Engine.
I like that too. And we'll have a link to this in the show notes. We're actually going to mention a little bit later on. But he's actually got a really nice illustration of what this used to look like. And in his example, is he's got a private read-only integer x, like a member variable set up private. And then he's got a getter with a capital X that just returns that variable. And now we've taken that, those 2 lines with maybe 9 words, and we've condensed it down to 5 words, 1 line.
cool.
And it's nice if you're doing a lot of immutable type stuff. And he's got a really nice blog post because, as we mentioned, it was really hard to find information. And there's still a lot of kind of head scratching going on around the internet trying to figure out exactly what is meant by some of these features.
Yeah, so again, that takes us into the next one, which was the auto property initializer, which is similar to the read-only, except now you have a get set, so you can do both of them. But what's beautiful is in the past, if you had something like public int x, you'd have get set in your curly braces, and then on the next line, maybe you'd have, x equal, 10. Well, now you can do it all on the same line. You can say public int x get set equal 10.
Well, this one makes even less sense because now that I was talking through the other one, it kind of makes more sense because the whole point of the read-only auto property there, the value of it is that you weren't providing the set method.
Right.
But yet at the same time, you wanted it to be an auto property that you could initialize to some value, but because you want it to be an auto property, you're not assigning, you're not using some local member variable to be what you're returning. But in this example, though, where they were talking about the auto property initializers, where they provided a set, a get and a set, it makes less sense to me. Why?
No.
What's the big deal now?
You can do it all on the same line. You don't have to do it on 2 separate lines. That's the only advantage. I mean, it's less typing, right?
It seems like very little less. It doesn't really seem like there's
No.
So the way I kind of think of it is it's really nice for defaulting something. If you want to default something to 10, then it's kind of gross that you declare the variable up here and then 30 lines below it's defaulted to something. But if you just have it on the one line, if you're scrolling through the code, you can see, oh, here's what's declared and here's its default value.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I totally get that. But like I said, I was saying that it makes the read-only version makes a whole lot more sense, like the actual benefit there.
I like them both.
Oh, I'm not saying I won't use it.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not saying I don't like it.
I like typing less.
It's not at the top of my wish list, but I'll take it.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. So the next one that we have on the list is static type using statements.
Yeah, and so the example they give here, which is really nice, is they can now say using system.math and then call methods like cosine, absolute value, square root throughout your code without doing the math.square root, math.cosine, math.abs. So that's really nice, sort of. But I don't like the thought of having these kind of classes that look like, these methods that look like they're part of my class when they're really part of this other static class that's kind of hiding up there in the usings.
Yeah,
I guess if you had a class that's doing like a lot of console right lining, then you should probably be using Log4Net or something. But but it's kind of nice that you can trim that console dot off all over your code. Although really, what you would do there is, or what I would do there is just instead of writing console dot write line in 100 lines and throughout my code, I would make one function called write line and just have it abstract that away. But now you don't need to. You can just say using system.console.
Yep, and then you're good.
It's interesting. So you're actually saying you're not importing the namespace. You're actually importing the static class.
All right, and then
this is importing all the static methods into the current namespace.
Yes,
not the class.
So it doesn't have to be a static class necessarily.
So that's where like the math.square root, math.round, all of that comes into play.
Okay. So yeah, math may not be a static class, but those are static methods.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to .peek that to see.
All right, the next thing we had on the list was property expressions.
Yeah, and we actually, it's kind of funny, we talked about this a little bit in the link episode, how there's something similar you can do is with variables inside of a method scope. You can say var x arrow sign 1 plus 2, and that'll, set up a function that adds 1 plus 2 whenever you invoke that x. But now we're saying you can do this outside of the method scope. So you can have these really lightweight, simple-looking functions. It actually looks a lot like functional programming, like F# type stuff, or like Lisp, where you can define these, and we're actually talking about properties, sorry, I got a little ahead of ourselves. You can define these properties as expressions with very little syntax. So it looks something like, I could have a property named tomorrow, arrow sign, date time dot now dot date add 1 day.
Yeah, so we talked about this too, because like one of the things that I said that I missed before were the macros from the C and C++ days, and this reminds me a lot of being able to bring that type of feature back.
Yeah, and it's definitely it's missing braces, and I like braces, so it's a little hard for me. But if it trims lines of code out, then I'll think about it.
Well, I guess that would depend on like how complicated you needed your expression to be there, right?
Well, once we get to a semicolon operator, you can get pretty complicated.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a sec.
Yeah.
So then we have method expressions, which is essentially the same type thing, except now you're defining a method using lambda expression.
Yep. So we had real lightweight properties. Now we've got lightweight methods. So you can give that same, tomorrow example, except now we say maybe get tomorrow parentheses, and then the rest is the same.
Yep. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean both of these to me are in the same camp as far as I'm concerned. They're both macros.
Yeah, and so that's 5, and I think every one of these was actually a done item. So these are things that in the actual Roslyn guide, as of today, April 30th, these are actually marked as done. And the next one up is something that's planned, but I really hope they do because I really like this one. And that is params for enumerables. So right now, if you have a function that takes any number of arguments, say like, for example, string.format or console.writeLine, something like that, where you take in what is right now an array of objects, and you can do, or actually array of any type, and you can do list type operations on them. Now you can actually take in a strongly typed enumerable of something and do the same type stuff, which is good for me. What I was doing with that those params before was basically converting to a list and doing whatever I wanted before. And now I can just kind of take it in as an enumerable and go.
Man, so your code's going to get a lot more simple then.
Yep.
You won't have to like convert your enumerables to a list and your list to an enumerable and then back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with all this spare time.
The monadic null checking.
This is my favorite.
I can't even say that one.
Yeah.
Known as the safe navigation operator.
It's
elsewhere.
Beautiful.
Yeah, how do they rename that somehow and make it worse?
Yeah, make it impossible to say.
Navigation, nadic something.
Nobody's going to be able to say that.
Yeah.
Monadic null checking.
It's going to get like truncated down to like the mono operator or something.
I bet if you took a vote, this would probably be one of the favorite features coming up.
Definitely.
Period. I mean, I know it is for me.
Yeah, we talked about in the link episode how null checks can really uglify your link expressions. And now we can work around that a little bit. And it also reminds a little bit of the coalesce operation from SQL. If you're familiar with that, you can basically say, if this is null, give me the next one. And in this case, you're actually saying only get this property if the parent is not null. So you can kind of string along these things until you get the value. And if any of those values along the line don't exist or are null, then you're going to get null back. If it does exist, you'll get that final value on the farmost
No more
right side.
first or defaults. I can just first everything.
Well, what this replaces really, when you look at it, is the whole if parent is not null, then this. If child is not null, then this. If grandchild is not null, then this. So this makes that thing just like one line of code. It's just so freaking easy to do.
Well, the joke that I was working on though was from a link point of view. If you were to call like whatever your list is like or your whatever your object is, dot first or default, and then check to see like, okay, is it not null? Then I can call on my additional commands on it. Instead, I'd be able to just do a first and then the safe navigation operator, or however you would say that.
Monadic null check.
Yeah, that, and then keep on going.
Doesn't first throw an exception though if there's no item?
Oh, you caught
you'd
me.
have to do first or default.
I was wondering to see like who was going to catch that.
Well, what I like is you can say stuff like, rather than saying if customer is not equal null, then if customer.order is not equal null, then if customer.order.payments is not equal null, do something. Now I could just say customer dot order dot dot payments dot do what I actually want to do.
Yeah, it's so sweet. It makes it so pretty.
Yeah, that is really nice.
We
got to come up with a better name. I've heard exclamation points referred to as bangs. You guys ever heard that?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And
yes.
wax. So if someone's speaking in Perl or something, I don't know what the question mark is, but I could say like quiz bang dot.
Quiz bang. Nice.
I'm not actually recommending that, by the way.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that one.
I hope that doesn't catch on. I hope I didn't just start a fire.
Earl.
Yeah, there's the I'm sorry.
That's URL.
Yes, nobody call it Earl.
Yeah, if you really want to make Alan mad, just start calling him Earls.
Yes, we'll block you from Twitter.
It reminded me about the when you were saying though about this the bang splat, the wacka wacka bang splat poem.
I don't know that one.
Yeah,
yeah. We all got to Google this.
We'll throw it up in the show notes. But it's wacka wacka bang splat tick tick hash caret at back tick dollar dash bang splat tick dollar underscore percent splat wacka wacka number 4 ampersand right paren dot slash vertical bar curly bracket tilde crash.
Okay, so just for those of you out there, I'm going to fill you in on something. Outlaw has been to the ends of the internet. He's seen it all.
This is actually like a really old poem though. This is not like, Did
you ever hear this one, Joe?
I just Googled it. So now
I'm pretty sure this is like, this predates the internet.
It says
19... Well, maybe not predate the internet, but it appeared... Okay, here it is. It says a 1990 issue of In Focus magazine, so it's pretty old.
1990. Let's think about that. That was back about in the
That's
day
back when
of
people
Pour Some
wrote
Sugar
poems.
on Me, right?
Coincidence?
Hey, we're going full circle.
Yep.
Yes. So, yes, there we go. All right, what's the next one we got? Constructor type parameter inference. Yeah.
Let's get excited. Let's get excited. So this one, if I was understanding it correctly, rather than having to do your brackets, I'm sorry, not brackets, but your alligators, to do like a list. And if you're going to do a new list, normally, okay, hold on, let me back up. You thinking of generics as they exist today, like if you were going to instantiate a new list object, you would say something like new list alligator int, and then maybe you'd have some values, but let's just say you did an empty parentheses, semicolon, boom, you're done, right? And now going with the constructor type parameter inference, you wouldn't have to do the alligator int if you were providing the type, so you could do new list and then in parentheses 1, 2, 3, and it would infer that.
Yeah,
right?
It would know that you had integers as your type.
Yep, and the example they give is actually for the tuple class, where before you would have to say var x equals new tuple int, and then 1, 2, 3 for your values. Now you can just do the 1, 2, 3, and it's going to figure out the int for you.
So it's kind of cool. It's almost like having var inside of those, an implicit var inside of your instantiations of the generics.
Well, specific to the list example that I gave, though, like, okay, so if you were going to have a list instantiated at the time that you newed it up, right, it'd be new list and then in curly braces 1, 2, 3 in that example, right? But you could just do
regular parens.
Curly braces.
Oh, yes, to actually give it
but you could just skip existing today, then list type altogether and just do new curly brace 1, 2, 3 curly brace, and it would infer that based off of the type that you were initializing, right? So that kind of functionality already existed,
right.
Or the ability, I should say, to
But we're also only just talking about generics here. You can do this with classes as well.
Right. So your example is specific to lists. That's some syntax that they added a while back.
Right.
If I had my
that's
own
what
class,
I was trying to clarify.
Yeah. So if I had like generic object bracket, or sorry, class that does something, gators, and then my generic class now can get that inferred rather than having to specify that T up front.
Right. So it's interesting. I mean, it might be useful.
All right. So inline declarations for out params.
Love it. Love
that. Yeah. And that one, every time I read the description, I'm like, oh, that sounds terrible. And then I realize what that actually means. And it's those try parses, man.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've had, because, okay, so I'm probably going to start a holy war here, because everywhere I can use var, I use var, but then there'll be those times where I don't want to say like int, or I don't want to say like var I equals 0 and then I equals int try parse, some string, and then, so, or I guess the try parse would have been
you have to do the out.
You have to do the out
for it instead of
the
instead of the equal, because that would have returned back the Boolean. But the point being is, like, there are times where ReSharper will complain to me. It's like, well, you're not even using this value, so you might as well just declare the type rather than use var. And it's like, but I wanted to use var.
Yeah, I don't want to have like 5 vars and 1 int.
Yeah, I'm in those cases, I'd prefer not to use var. And we've talked about this before with the holy war type stuff, unless it's clear. Now, if you say var I equals 0, yes. But if you just say var I, that's horrible.
Well, you can't do that. That's the point.
It won't let you.
So you have to initialize it.
Yeah.
And if you were to initialize it and then not use it, then, you're going to get your hand slapped by ReSharper.
Right.
Or, maybe you have some other tool that's doing that. But, yeah, so it's the one place where, like, I'll have to... declare it, and now I won't have to, because now I can just do it in line in my try parse.
Yeah, so coming around full circle on what he's talking about is, instead of now having those separate lines, now you can just say int.try parse and then some value and then out I, and you're done. It defines I for you and assigns the value.
No, out var
I.
Yeah.
But it assigns the value for you and creates it at that time. You could
specifically call it back out as like out int I if you wanted to, but specifically in some of the Microsoft documentation, they were using var.
Yeah, it's absolutely var. Beautiful, because now you can do it all in one line.
Take that, Vlad.
That also, yes, Vlad's not a fan of var that much. But this I actually want us to come back to this when we get to the semicolon thing, because I wonder if you could almost, because you remember it was split across multiple lines, now you'd actually be able to do everything on a single line separated by semicolons without having to do that. We'll hit that in a minute. So okay. It might even be a decent example on that one.
Okay.
So the next one, this one I actually thought was really cool. This one's exception filters. So basically, when you have try-catch statements, one of the problems that you have in the past is all your errors would go into your catch. Well, if you weren't trying to capture, or you didn't care about particular types of errors, you would have to rethrow. And the problem that you have there is that modifies your stack. It now knows that you've touched it somewhere in the middle. So now what you can have is you can actually have a filter that's tacked on to the end of the catch statement there. And you can say, hey, if it meets this criteria, then come into my catch. Otherwise, skip it. And what that does is that allows you to not modify the stack if you're not wanting to catch for that type of error. So it's pretty cool.
I don't like it.
Yeah, what?
No, I don't like it. Because then my application might throw an exception. I have to have my general purpose catch there so that my application runs bug free.
And you put a comment in that says do nothing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to, just
this
ignore
wasn't
it.
An accident. Why would you think that?
Ignore it. Move on. Nothing to see.
Yeah.
What this reminds me of is when you set conditional breakpoints. So you set your breakpoint and you right click, do a little condition that says only break when x equals 5, something like that. So now you can kind of do something similar with your exceptions, and not rooting the call stack is wonderful.
Yeah, I love that. And if you're doing web type stuff where you're having to trace through a bunch of pages and controls and whatnot, this really helps you nail down where the error came from without getting a bunch of garbage in the middle.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so who wants to get really excited now about some Here we go. I'm going there. Binary literals.
All three of you
Boom!
in the world.
Yeah. There's one guy that's really happy about this somewhere.
Yeah, they're probably doing a little bit more low-level programming than we are, right?
I've done a little messing around with binary, just kind of no good reason for doing it like this. But it has been kind of a pain because like it's almost like you create an int and then you like somehow convert it to a byte, and it's just kind of this gross hacky way. But now I can just say 0B110110 whatever.
The only time I've cared about like having text values in my code, or even like if I've wanted binary, if I wanted binary literals in my code, would have been for like flags for like ORing stuff together.
Permissions or something.
Yeah, if I want to be able to like OR a bunch of values together, which that's the only really time I can't get excited about this one.
I mean, it's cool, right? It's a shorthand, but I mean,
it kind of does make you wonder though. It's like, wow, why did it take so long?
Yeah,
but it's because you never noticed that it was there, right? And not a lot of people were complaining about it. So here we are, years later.
Yeah, and they've already had this for hex, the whole 0xFF whatever thing.
Right. So now we're gonna have 0B.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, it's there.
And I hate flags, by the way.
What? Well,
yeah, when you do the flags like on an enum or something, or you just have like some sort of byte array and you OR them together.
Man, that was how Win32 API worked, man. What are you talking about?
So it's totally fine if all your flags.
How are you going to define your window if you didn't OR all the attributes of what the window is supposed to look like?
As soon as you add one mutually exclusive flag, then the whole thing is all screwed up. So it's fine if you can have 1 and 2 and 5, and those all make sense together. But as soon as you start saying, oh well, I can have 7, but not 7 and 2 at the same time, because these things, it's either this feature is on or this feature is off, or these things don't make sense to exist together.
You can do that.
Well, you can't really.
Huh?
So let's say we've got a flag set, and value 1 is Diet Coke, and value 2 is cherry syrup, and because it always ends up being a hodgepodge
numbers
of,
though.
like,
Hold
semi-related
on.
stuff.
If we're going to talk about examples, they wouldn't have been string values like that we were going to OR together. So I'm thinking back to my Win32.
They're not strings, but they represent things in the real world.
Yeah, one's going to be your Diet Coke and 2's going to be your cherry syrup. All right.
It'd have been something like
you can't
a bordered window with and then the window has the minimize and maximize attributes.
But see, I'm imagining those big Coke machines that have like Five Guys now, where you go and it's like you could do the Coke with the lime or whatever. Oh, they're amazing.
Oh, they're horrible.
Okay, we'll get back to that. but like if you had to implement something like that with flags and like the the underlying machine code, whatever, then you might have had like a bit that represents diet, and a bit that represents lime, and a bit that represents cherry. But the problem is you can have diet and lime, or diet and cherry, but you can't have lime and cherry. So now you've got these flags where you have to kind of remember that I can have this one and this one together, but I can't have this one and this one together.
Oh, so now you have to have mappings of what can and can't go together in your binary stuff. Huh.
And it seems like every time I see flags, that always ends up being an issue. And then, like at some point, whoever is actually using that data has to decide. Well, you chose cherry and lime, so you're getting cherry. And I don't like that structure. Then that rule isn't really enforced anywhere.
You're gonna make me like try to go back and write some code on this one, because it's been a long time since I've had it. See, this is why I can't get excited about this feature. I've used this feature so little in recent years that I'm having trouble to think back. And the only code that's even coming to mind is from the 90s.
Yeah.
I've used it in permission systems before for roles, for like read write. I mean, think about Linux, right?
It's code that you wrote?
Yeah, actually. So, but this is kind of how Linux operates with its file permission system, right?
And be clear, by you wrote, I meant like you were defining the flags yourself.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Saving them in a database and then pulling them back out and doing the anding and all that in the application.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, but it's one of those things that you do once and you never touch afterwards, right? So,
well, I guess if you're excited about the binary literals, you're going to love this next one.
This next one's a doozy.
Because let me tell you, hold on, brother, hold on. Here it comes. I'll be back. Digit separator.
And if I'm reading this one correctly, I actually do like it a little bit, because originally I kind of thought that the digit separator meant like if you have the number 1000 rather than 1000, you could say 1_000 in place of like the comma for us US folks, or maybe the period if you're Korean, and there's all sorts of different separators. And it kind of helps you if you're ever been the kind of person who's like counted the number of zeros to see if you did 10 seconds or 100 seconds, then this kind of helps you. But it looks like you can actually put this digit separator wherever you want. So if you've got some sort of number, or especially hex, that there's some significance.
Here we go again.
Or if it was binary, right, and you want to break up this big binary number that you did with the 0B and then 16 bytes, you could actually separate that into groups of 4 or something logical that makes sense to you and reads easily.
Yeah, you can do it with decimals too, like they pointed out earlier. Like instead of having to count places, you can put them where the commas would be, and it doesn't really do anything to the number; it just makes it more readable.
Yeah, if I got like RGB color, I can say FF _00_00.
Yeah, it's just visually helpful. So
yeah. So wait a second. What do you have against those awesome Coke machines?
Oh man,
you live in Atlanta. You a Pepsi fan? Is that what's going on?
No, it has no. Here's the problem: is in the old school style machine, you could have at least a couple people that could use the machine at the same time. Now you got one machine, so you got a single queue for it, and it's always somebody who's confused by how to use the machine that has to sit there for 5 minutes to figure out how to use it. And then once they do figure out how to use it, now they're just inundated with choice, and they don't know which one to pick. When really they're going to get the same Coke they've always gotten.
Oh, man, I just realized I'm that guy. Oh, great. I got a complex now. I was at Fuddruckers the other day, and I was like, let me try a mix of the lime and the cherry and the lemon and the vanilla root beer. And I look behind me like, oh, my gosh, there's like 3 people back here.
So you're like the 7-year-old again.
And I'm like, there's only 7 left. Whatever.
Well, this is awkward.
No, I will say, though, I'm a fan of the machine from the sheer availability of different products. I do not like the fact that I have to touch a machine that other people are touching when I'm eating food. Like, that drives me crazy because there's this nasty touch screen.
Who has OCD?
Yeah.
No, come on, man. You know people don't wash their hands when they walk out of certain
Kids
laboratories.
touch it. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Man.
And I mean, there's like fingerprints all over it, and you're having to touch the same exact spot everybody else did because they had to push that button right there in the middle. I'm not a fan.
And
but it is 144 choices.
Yeah. And by the way, that actually makes me mad when somehow it defaults to like a grape or a cherry or something. I just want a Sprite. And all of a sudden it comes out green or red, and I'm mad.
The person before you got like some grape, something weird, and you're like, I got some grape in your Sprite.
Yeah, it's
cool.
frustrating.
You always got to push that push button first to just let like a little bit of it go before you put it in your cup.
Oh. No.
Because but it gives you more opportunities to touch the same button that other people were touching after they got out of the bathroom.
Next time, I'm just going to lick my finger before I go up there and stick it right on the screen.
Jesus. You're in line behind me then.
Wow.
All right, so yes, moving on.
Just wait for me to get back from the bathroom before you get your drink.
If you're not familiar with what we're talking about, it's coming to a fast food restaurant near you.
Yeah, I think Burger Kings have them too. So, yes. All fine dining restaurants. So where are we at now? What have we got? So we did the digit separator.
Number 13-ish.
So 13-ish. We are on.
I think that's 14 now, right?
Hold on. No, don't
1, 2,
don't
3,
start.
3, 4.
It'd be like 11 or 10. All right, the indexed members and element initializers and accessors.
Hate it.
Well,
I like it.
Hey,
well, where's this $sign symbol come from?
Okay.
Well, okay.
So, all right. So now it's just starting to look like pro. Like the deal is that you can do this $sign instead of square brackets in the quotes, and so you save a couple characters. But at what cost?
This is so that the Perl developers will feel more comfortable in C#.
I think they're trying to bring in the jQuery guys. I think that's what's going on.
Oh, you think it's jQuery guys?
Yeah, it's closer to jQuery, I think. I don't know. It's all right. It's a shorthand for being able to create objects that resemble JSON type stuff. So it's a quick way of basically nesting objects, from what I can tell.
Well, like one of the examples that I saw was specifically, imagine you have an array. So you have some array, and you have the normally to access that you would use your brackets, right? And then you'd put your indexer in it, right? And they were saying that with this new feature, you'd be able to do J dot dollar and then that variable. Mm-hmm. Right? That seems very Perl-like to me.
Can you nest them so you get like multiple dollar signs in one line?
I think so.
Hate it.
So if it was a two-dimensional array, you'd have like my array dot dollar x dot.
Well, no, that's
dollar
not
x
really,
dollar y.
I don't know that that's the two-dimensional arrays.
I don't. Let's hope it doesn't go there.
But I don't think with the arrays you had to use the dollar signs. It was only with objects. I think with the arrays you could actually do.
The example that I saw was specifically on an array.
If I remember right, I could have sworn, but I mean.
I think what it is about the dollar sign is it's not semantic. It doesn't mean anything. Like, I see the safe navigation operator, the question mark, that kind of, it lends itself to its purpose, right? So you see that question mark and it means, hey, this could be null. We've got the same thing with the nullable types. But the dollar sign.
Money.
Yeah, I saw like, are we talking about dollars? Are we talking about finding elements on the page? What's going on?
Yeah, so.
Talking about buying some new Coke machines for these restaurants right here.
Yeah, only if you're doing strings do you have to do that. So if you're doing something like a dictionary where you have an int and a string, you can actually do the curly braces and put the ints in brackets and then the string second. It's with strings where you have to put the dollar sign in front. So if you're doing object properties, so if this was a property of an object, you have to have the dollar sign and then the variable name equal the string. Yeah.
Someone's got to say it.
Well, no, because even in the... Are you sure it was limited to strings? Because in the Microsoft documentation, they use dollar for... They show dollar $x equals 3.
So the key... the key.
The key.
Yes, the key is what we're talking about. So if you're doing an array that actually has numbers, you don't have to do the dollar sign.
Yeah, so maybe I'm just old school, man, but what's wrong with XML?
I'm not a fan of XML.
Oh, come on, man. They got XSDs. It's like strongly typed.
Yeah, it's also extremely verbose when sometimes you don't need that.
You do the JSON parsing, though. You just got to kind of hope it works. You're like, I don't know if this is going to work. It worked on the one message I tried.
That's why the dynamic variables and Newtonsoft.
If Newtonsoft says it's so, then it's awesome. So.
There it is, done. I'd rather that than XML. Unless I'm dealing with third parties that need, strong XSDs and that kind of stuff. So I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, if I'm dealing with a third party, I'd much rather they have an XML API.
Yes, agreed.
You can validate it.
But if I'm doing my own app and it's using Web API or something like that, I'd much rather use with JSON. It's easier from a UI standpoint, from JavaScript and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's human readable too. Which is nice. If you're like a big XML document, just scroll. No.
Yeah, it gets old.
Or especially depending on your browser, spaces. You're like, expand, collapse.
Oh.
Yeah. So, all right. So we beat that one to death. The next one is actually kind of cool. I don't think I'd ever really paid much attention to it, but await is now available in catch and finally blocks. Apparently, people had done like massive workarounds for this in the past. And I don't know why I haven't run across this, but it's now there. You can use it. You can close. You can, finish threads and close them out. So
I'm going to use this one where I await on all my binary literals.
There you go. It seems a little weird to me. I always try to keep what's in my catch and finally blocks really light because I really don't want those to fail. It's like something's already kind of failed or finishing up. So it's kind of, to me, it seems like doing something a little risky. Where I don't like there to be risk, but hey, that's me.
But closing,
I'm wrong constantly.
I would think finishing up a thread that maybe was out there hung or something, finally would be a good place to do that, right? To clean up the threads.
Yeah, but not by doing it by await.
But
I would rather
you're
just
doing,
kill it.
You're awaiting on something, so you're making a new call on this one, right?
Not from the docs I saw.
Did I misinterpret it? Was it saying that it was going to return from the await inside your catcher?
So,
finally?
like the example given in the doc that's up on the Roslyn site. Yeah. So, like in the catch, they have await resource.log async, and then in the finally,
that's my point. They're doing a new. This is going to Joe's point about it being risky because they're doing that asynchronous call, and they're going to await for it inside of the catch, which you're already in a bad state.
Yes.
because you're in your catch.
But I think what they're trying
now
to do
it's kind of risky.
They're trying to see what's happening on that thread at that point, and then in the finally they do await res.close async. So they're closing it out. So they caught the problem, then finally they're going to close it. So I don't know. I mean, again, I don't guess I've ever run into this issue, but yeah.
Maybe you have. If you've got a good example of this, we'd love to hear it. This is definitely one that we have struggled with a bit.
Yeah. All right, who's doing this next one?
Man,
I think Joe.
We could not find anything
this was
about
his
this one.
favorite.
Yeah. So I must have spent a good 20 minutes just now looking for it again. But somewhere along the line, we found a new feature called extension add methods. And we cannot find it again.
We have no idea what this actually means.
It
might just be a
just
typo.
like the name says.
It has an add method
methods.
that's an extension to
It
something.
couldn't possibly be any more clear.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man, we looked at some examples and they're about as clear as mud. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we would love to hear anything you've got on this. Educate us.
Because we have nothing.
Until then, we'll wait for like John Skeet to write the book.
Exactly.
Yeah, John Skeet, if you're out there, we got a question for you.
Yeah. And leave us a review. So, yeah. Anyways, so the next thing, event initializers. This is pretty cool.
Yep. And this is for if you've seen like you basically just like constructor initializers. You're creating a new class, you do the bracket thing, and then you can set the properties right there in lieu of a constructor. And I can do that with events as well. So I'm a big fan of initializers. So this is cool.
Yeah, I like anything that makes a line of code shorter.
I think there's a lot of these, though, that just aren't... I mean, they're nice.
They make your code cleaner. That's it.
And I'm not trying to say that, hey, thank you, Microsoft, for putting these features out there. Don't take me wrong. Don't
take them out just because Outlaw's like poo-pooing on them.
Exactly. But a lot of these are features that I'm not as excited. The safe navigation operator so far is the one that I'm the most excited about. But some of these other ones...
The monadic null checking is what
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, this seems...
The Mona operator.
This is not a game-changing release. This is sugar. This is quantity over... I don't want to say quality because it's really good features, but this is a lot of features. We got around 20, but there's no links hidden in here.
Well, and again, there was a lot more than 20.
Yeah, there's really... I mean, most of this stuff is just shortcut ways to do things.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of these... some of these were like, oh, I didn't even realize you couldn't do that already. I just never even tried.
Yeah.
So some of these, just can't get excited about it. Except for that binary literal, though.
How about the next? The next one's pretty cool, though. The semicolon operator. This one took us a little while to find anything that really made sense to us, but I think Joe actually dug up something on this one.
Yeah, it's funny. Doing a lot of research on the semicolon operator and trying to find that specific to C#. Everything you Google for basically directs you to the comma operator, which is common in stuff like JavaScript and Python. And apparently it's the same kind of thing. And what it means is if you've got an M semicolon N, I know that translates really well over the wire, but it means that you would evaluate the first expression for its side effect and the second expression for its value. So an example of that would be kind of the tomorrow thing we mentioned before, is now I can say var tomorrow equals, parentheses, create a new variable, var today equals datetime.now, and then a semicolon, then today, date add 1 day. And what that means is I've got this variable today that's being created in the first part of this line, and then I'm using that to kind of as a jumping off point for the second part of the line, and it's the second part of the line, and actually it's whatever's on the far most right because you can chain these things together.
Right.
That's what gets finally returned to the initial, var tomorrow.
So this one to me, when we were reading through it, it seemed like this was just yet another way to do an anonymous function. Is what it felt like. But what I question about this one, and this is where John Skeet can help us out, is that if, like, in your example where you did the var today inside of the parentheses, right? What's the scope of that? Is is that variable today limited to being scoped inside the parentheses, or outside of those parentheses? Can it be used a second time? Or what about inside of those parentheses? Does it have access to variables that are scoped inside of the method that it's in?
Yeah,
right?
And we have not been able to find the answer to that question. I feel like it's going to be basically the same scope that the outer variable is for, because it's parentheses. If it was braces, I would expect it to be scoped to the brace, but I've never seen anything where it's scoped to the parenthesis. In fact, if you think of like a normal for loop and you say var I equals 0, you do have access to that throughout the scope of the following curly braces. So maybe that's not a good example.
Exactly, but that's exactly my point.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing.
So one of the, and just so you know, you can't play with this one because this is one of the ones that is planned. So this is all speculation on our part. Like, we really don't know. But so tying back into the one that we were talking about earlier with the out declaration thing, I can't even remember what that one was called.
You're talking about
inline declarations for params. Yeah, so one thing that you could do here that would be kind of interesting is you could say, for instance, int I equal, and then in the parens you could say var some number equals 0 semicolon int dot parse, whatever value, and then out back to that variable some number, right? So you could accomplish the same type thing using this, is what I was getting at earlier, is you could almost basically do that same type try parse thing and out it to the number at the beginning that you defined at the beginning of your semicolons. So I don't know. I
think you kind of lost me on that one.
I don't know if
it seems like you can do a lot more in one line right now. Yes. I just have a hard time with the line because it's using a semicolon rather than something else. So it feels like two weird lines kind of smashed, or multiple weird lines smashed into one. And
with
so
the last part being returned.
Yeah. And I don't know. That one to me, it seems like a kind of an interesting feature, but at the cost of readability. So I'm not too keen on it.
Imagine what this would look like inside your for loop.
I already have it in my for loop.
No, but I'm saying, like, if you were to use it inside of each portion, three portions of your for loop.
No.
And imagine if inside of there you used, inside of this set of parentheses, you had two semicolons so that it looked like
like an actual for loop.
I refuse to imagine that.
You could make a for each statement that looked like a for loop.
Maybe ReSharper will have a command that I can use to right click and clean that crap up.
Yeah. They'll be like, no,
they
get
do
that
for
out of
everything
here.
else. So.
Yeah, but the scoping question is going to be interesting to see, like, whatever comes of that.
Yeah.
So
ReSharper needs a don't do that command.
All right, so I think Outlaw researched this next one quite a bit.
I did. Private protected. That's like awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of a conflicting name. It's almost like an oxymoron. Private protected.
It hurts my head.
Yeah, I don't. I'm a little torn. So the member is protected inside the assembly, but private outside the assembly.
In English, please.
Okay, the member is protected inside the assembly, but private outside the assembly. So okay, so let's back up. So because immediately the question became like, well, hold on, wait a minute, because if the variable is private, then it's only accessible inside that class. No child class can use it. And if you're making it protected, then you're going one step beyond and saying, okay, or you're giving like one extra layer of access to it by saying like, okay, children can access this now, right? Which makes this sound confusing because now you're combining the two and you're saying like, what does that mean, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like the protected internal that was already in the language where it was an or, right? It was let me figure out how that was worded again. It was that the protected internal that already existed, the documentation stated that the type or member can be accessed by any code in the assembly in which it is declared or from within a derived class, right? So that's what this reminded me of, is that now we're adding on like another or extension here. So we're saying that it's protected inside the assembly, or it's private outside the assembly.
So I've got a parent class, and it's got a protected method that does something. Now, what we're saying is anything that's inside that assembly can inherit that parent, and it can access that protected method.
Yes.
But if you're outside, and that parent could be a public class, you're outside, you're in a different assembly, and you inherit that parent class, you cannot access those protected methods.
Right.
Correct.
The private
protected methods.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
you won't be able
that
to...
feels like an internal, right?
So that's what I'm saying. Like that's where the or portion comes in. So like the and that's why I brought out the protected internal, because it's already in the language and it's treated kind of like an or syntax for or an or accessor on your member or method. And that's the way this one to me feels like another or option.
Yeah, it's just awkward phrasing. Private protected, but I guess if you read it from left to right, it's not so bad. So you remember, to the outsiders, it's private. Insiders, it's protected.
I'm still not crazy about the name.
No.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a good suggestion for fixing it, but
we could have made a new accessor method called like outsiders F off.
yeah. I've never had this.
I'm going to submit all my suggestions to Microsoft.
Yeah, I can't think of a time where I would use this, but
if you're, I don't know. I've never even almost had this come up, so
yeah,
kind of interesting.
Apparently, somebody has. So
yeah, it's weird. I guess I would just normally use it as mark it as internal, and then just not use it by anything else. But not except for children. Yeah, that's weird.
But then children outside of your assembly.
I just feel like I kind of already trust the stuff in my assembly, right? So to me, like internal seems like it's pretty well got that case covered. Yeah, sure, things that aren't my children can access it. That may not make sense. Not great. So this is better, but the betterness that I'm buying, I don't know if it's worth the unfortunate name.
Hold up, if you're shipping a library or something that you made that other companies bought or something, I could see where this would probably come up. You want all your internal stuff that you built yourself to be able to access that information, but outside you don't want them to be able to see your internal implementation variables.
But then I would just make it protected.
No, but then the outside of the assembly, if they inherited your class, they'd still be able to
touch it. Yeah.
So it's just weird that like I want you to be able to inherit my class, but I don't want you touching my protected methods. Like that's weird.
Well, no, not necessarily just methods. It might be methods, but it could also be variables, right? I don't know. I could see that seems to be more the type thing where if you're shipping components to other people.
I mean, I'm not saying that I don't see a use for it.
Yeah, the naming's rough.
It seems valuable. It's just the naming that I have a problem with, because the two names contradict one another.
Yeah, completely.
I mean, like okay, to illustrate my point further, let's say that it was private public. All right,
so it's private to the outside world and public to my.
Or you show your privates in public. No, we should probably cut that.
If it was private public, to illustrate the point, right? It's really gross, and that's the way this feels. It doesn't seem like they belong together.
They don't.
It's like, get your chocolate out of my peanut butter.
Oh man!
Yeah, the wheels came off the bus.
I'm still laughing about the other thing.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to keep us centered here.
Us back. Sorry about that. All right, so and then the last thing. So we beat that one to death too. The last one, name of operator. This one's okay. I mean, Michael doesn't like it too much. It's like a shortcut reflection method. You have some sort of object and you want to quickly get basically the name of that object or maybe a method in it. And, say that you got something back from a factory and you don't really know what the type or any of that is, and you want to find out, quickly where that method came from so that you could log it in case something went wrong. Then you could call name of and then do that instance.
So this is referred to as the infoof operator. Right?
If you say so.
That's what it is.
Info of.
Okay. I didn't make this crap up.
The infoof operator.
But that's the way Microsoft says it in one of their blogs. Did
it have like a little voice button on there that you clicked and it said infoof?
Well, they whimsically insist that it be pronounced infoof.
Nice.
Okay. But yeah, this one seems like the greatest benefit here is your ability to refactor later will accept the change, easily without you having to go looking through like string literals in your code or in your comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here you go. Pop quiz. How do you actually write out the name of a method, like to the console?
Oh, God.
Yeah, you got to Google it, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
No, you don't.
Yeah, now you got name of.
No, I've never actually done that. So,
I mean, it's reflection boiled down to its easiest possible way, right?
Oh,
Yeah, I think there's like some stack frames coming.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty gross. Well, that's if you want to get the current method, like the method that you're in, which is probably what you're.
Well, I thought that's where you were going with your pop quiz hotshot.
Oh yeah, I deliberately misled you. I don't apologize.
Thanks. I just shot the hostage for nothing.
And so with those are the however many we've got because they're not numbered properly. We've got links to all these type things. The list of them from above. We've also got an explanation on some of the more weird ones. And then there's also a complete feature explanation. And these are all coming from either Microsoft or Codeplex with the Roslyn information. So now, what are we doing?
We're talking about Roslyn.
Yeah, I mean,
so
how could this show end without talking about Roslyn?
Yeah, and what we're talking about here, all these 20-ish features that we talked about, are all things that come along with the Roslyn compiler that everything's switching over to, the Visual Studio is switching over to. And I heard on a couple podcasts, I'm not sure which one it was anymore, but we'll have links, that Microsoft's been using the Roslyn compiler, like basically dogfooding it in-house for quite a while. And these are new features that they've been adding in, and that we're getting these new features along with Roslyn. And kind of some of the bigger news around there was that the build conference that just happened in 2014, in April, they actually made this project completely open source, which is very cool. It's under the Apache 2 license, which is really permissive, which is really cool. And I'm really excited to see what kind of stuff happens around like Xamarin and Mono and, who knows.
Well, now that Xamarin's part of Microsoft.
Are they?
Wasn't it? Oh, no. Or which one did they just buy? Was it Mono or Xamarin?
I thought it was just rumors, but
wait,
I thought to do some Googling.
I thought Xamarin was associated with Mono somehow.
No, I mean, it was.
Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know anymore now.
Jeez.
Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
but one way or the other, the cool thing is with open sourcing that what?
Whatever, go on.
What you got?
No, go on.
Okay. So yeah, but some of the research I was trying to do is Roslyn's been talked about for a long, long time, many years. So I was hoping to find some sort of bullet points that just said, here's what Roslyn is. But I didn't find a real concise statement. There's a couple things you hear thrown around, like it's a compiler as a service. It's a open source compiler. It allows you to write your own operators, and it allows you to do this, it allows you to do that, but it doesn't really, fit well into the definition of the kind of things that I usually think of. I can't really say that it's just a compiler.
Yeah,
so it's really built into Visual Studio, and there's a lot of other stuff to it.
Well, it was a compiler written in the languages that it actually compiles, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
because it's Turing complete. Is that the expression where you can build yourself out of yourself?
Yeah, it's kind of cool. So, I mean, the compiler was written in C# and it can compile C#. And it also, one of the big things that they were talking about was the fact that it will actually examine the code and I forget exactly how they put it now, but essentially you can almost like write your own Visual Studio type thing out of this because it has the plugs for doing the formatting and the syntax checking and all that kind of stuff.
So, as far as the Xamarin thing going back there, it looks like that was just mostly rumor, but they definitely partnered together at the build. So there was announcements related to that. But, what I'm really excited about here, though, that I hope to see come out of it, is I'm hoping that this gives C# more of an opportunity to be more cross-platform if others were to take that and that open source compiler and port it to, other environments.
Yeah, Linux, Mac, whatever.
That's what I'd like to see.
Same here. Because I mean, really, what are the only cross-platform things we have right now? You have Java, and
well, but I mean, yeah, it is. you still need the runtime.
Yeah. The compiler only takes it down to the managed code part. So
it's gonna be curious to see like what does this really mean though. But the hope I have inside is that it would allow for C# to become more widespread and the adoption rate to go up. Because when I look at C# compared to other languages like
Objective-C.
Oh God!
Oh my gosh!
Don't get me started. I was at least going to start, with something nicer because Alan mentioned Java. And, when you look at C# compared to Java, and let's not even talk about Objective-C, then C# is it's very elegant in the way that you can write your code. And I'm not saying that you can't write nice code in Java, but what I mean is that there's just some features about it that are just so much more elegant about the way that they go about solving the problem. And I hope my hope is that it would become more widespread. And I'm hoping that open sourcing Roslyn is the starting point to that happening. But we'll see.
Well,
right?
From the compiler standpoint, like you said, that's just compiling the code. That's not running the code anywhere. Yeah, I know,
and that's why I said that. So it's like it's kind of like it almost feels like an empty promise, right? Because like when Microsoft first announced .NET, way back when, right? They not open source the specification. What would the term be for it? But they definitely put out the specification for the CLR so that if others wanted to implement it, then here's the spec for it, and you can do it. And so far, of all the companies that have taken it, no other companies have actually done much with it. So, it hasn't really been widespread in terms of cross-platform development, which is unfortunate because it is such a nice language to code in.
Yeah, I would love to see it spread.
It's absolutely my preferred language of choice. It's just you can't use it everywhere.
Yeah, it's on Windows. So.
Yeah, and so that's like the open source kind of side of it, but I'm still really just trying to wrap my head around like what exactly where Roslyn fits in, because one of the cooler blog posts I saw was from I guess I don't want to call the guy Smell Elegant, but that's the name of the blog. But he actually goes in and adds his own operator overload for adding two arrays together, and he adds this feature to the compiler. And then you actually see he takes a screenshot of what the code looks like in Visual Studio for his project, and it's got the the red squigglies like you can't do this doesn't exist, you can't add two arrays. He adds it to the compiler, and Visual Studio picks up on the compiler, and it's a good thing. It looks right, it works, and that's really cool. You just added something into the actual language, and that's really cool. But especially with the Visual Studio play there, I'm just like kind of wrapping my head around where this fits.
Yeah, and one thought that I had was that I'm sure somebody's going to bring up going back to my rant from a moment ago that there's mono, so that could be cross-platform. But I was talking about something that might be more first-class citizen. Mono always seemed like hey, let's decompile it and figure out how we can make this work somewhere else.
Right.
Although decompilers are really good. And I think Microsoft's always been really good about not obfuscating their code. I've never tried to decompile any of their stuff and had a bad time of it. So
but again, my point though is that if Microsoft is open sourcing this thing, then it's a first-class citizen. It's not, hey, we're reverse engineering what they've done in order to make this work over here.
Right. Here's the code. Do what you want with it. Yeah. Here's the original code. Do what you want with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see it. But it wasn't just Roslyn that they open sourced either. Alan's got actually a really big list of 24 other open source initiatives.
That he'd like to say to you now.
Yeah, I'm not going to read all of them, but I will tell you this. It's at www.netfoundation.org. And some of the more interesting ones, so the two companies that have basically put into this are Microsoft and Xamarin. So Xamarin, I think they said put 6 projects into this, but they're all open source. So some of the bigger ones that you'll recognize are ASP.NET MVC. You'll be able to get the source code. ASP.NET Web API. It's another big one. They have some things for Hadoop.
Entity Framework.
Entity Framework is open source. The Windows Phone Toolkit, which kind of surprised me. Xamarin.mobile. What else? Signal R. If you don't know what that is, it's kind of cool. It's like an open WebSocket to a browser, so you have real-time communication.
The Azure SDK.
Yeah, Azure's in there. I mean, and it'd be nice if I spelled it right.
So I guess we are going to talk about all of these.
Not completely. So, I mean, those are some of the bigger ones. I mean, there's some other that aren't quite as jump out at you, but I don't know. It's kind of cool that they are opening up a lot of these libraries so that if you want to go in there and poke around and figure out how they work and extend them to do other things, you have access to do it now.
But again, like this is where my hope comes in, right? Is that this is all great, and I'm glad that they do it. But what I really would like to see is this thing to become useful on other platforms too, right? So that the adoption rate really kicks off.
So I don't have to use Objective-C.
Right. I mean, because the thing is, the whole idea is, well, any open source, right? The whole idea is you get a community involved, and they come up with needs that maybe never would have made it in because Microsoft looked at it and said, hey, we don't have enough demand for this, but now the community can help build this thing up. So I don't know. It would be awesome if, these features get added and then they all of a sudden, instead of just being limited to a Windows environment, now you see it pop up on Linux or Mac. I mean, that would be excellent. So I don't know. We'll see how this goes. From what I understand, this is brand new. The .NET Foundation is, I mean, it just came about. So I guess we have a little bit of waiting and seeing.
Yep, and also I think this opens the door to a lot of stuff I haven't really thought about yet. One thing that springs to mind is that JetBrains, who make the ReSharper that we always talk about and love very much, they actually posted an article talking about how they're not going to be switching over ReSharper to Roslyn because they've got a lot of time invested in their current compiler. But what I hadn't even realized until this point is, they've got their own kind of C# compiler built in that's going out and doing a lot of these things, and this is how we get those extra features. But it makes me wonder, like, well, what kind of other stuff can you do with a compiler besides, syntax highlighting and refactoring type stuff? So maybe we'll see a lot of other really cool tools kind of come out of this.
Mm-hmm.
I love the ReSharper.
Yeah, the barrier to entry is now lower. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, so that's exciting.
Yeah, that's about it for Roslyn. So there were a lot of resources, and we mentioned a lot of these, but we just want to kind of gather them up here at the end. We talked about Damien G. He's got a great blog post on the probable C# features, and they're all actually really illustrated and done up really nicely. John Ski actually has got a really great blog on his first reactions where he kind of gives his in-depth opinions on a few of the features. This is really cool. And we've got an article from Hanselman. It's really good. We've also, speaking of Hanselman, there was an episode of Hanselman's and .NET Rocks that we'll have links to where they actually interviewed someone from the Roslyn team that kind of talks about what Roslyn is and what things are looking like for the future.
With that, why don't we go to the tips of the week?
What you got, Outlaw?
As C# developers are often intertwined with Java developers. Should you find yourself using IntelliJ as your IDE of choice for your Java development, which is also another JetBrains product, I found this site called ideacolorthemes.org that was mentioned on a Stack Overflow question where you could go in and get themes for your IntelliJ environment that other people had already put together. So, depending on what kind of color scheme you liked, maybe you'll find it there.
So you can keep your color scheme because this is among like IntelliJ, AppCode. I use WebStorm too, which is really nice. ReSharper.
Yeah, I mean,
Visual Studio.
It wasn't. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like the end all be all of lists. Of available choices. I mean, there were certainly limitations there, but it was definitely like a nice starting point if you wanted to poke around because IntelliJ out of the box only comes with like I think 3 themes.
Oh, you guys use the dark theme in Visual Studio, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I'm a fan.
I'm trying it right now. I still don't like it.
It takes a while to adjust, but it's so much easier
awesome
on your eyes. Oh man,
it's awesome. And so IntelliJ has one that's called Darkula, but it's not quite at the same level as Visual Studio.
I'm impressed you said that with a straight face.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But I did.
All right, so my tip of the week was I was trying to do some debugging, and one of the things that's frustrating is when you're trying to initialize objects, a lot of times it'll just step right over it. You even try to F11 into the different properties, and it just skips over it. Well, if you go into your options, debugging options, and you dig into some of the one of the sub menus, and there is actually a section to where you can tell it to not skip the property initializers. So then you can actually step through each property that's being set in your object initializer, which is really nice because I had some situations come up where my object was failing. I kept ending up in my catch, and I was getting really irritated because it would say that there was a cast error. Well, when you got 20 properties, it's like, oh, come on. Of course it's going to be the 19th one, right? So turning that feature on allows you to step through some of it. Now, the odd thing is this didn't work in every situation, and I can't explain why that happens, but I would say that at least 75% of the time it did work. So again, that's probably an option worth checking out, especially if you have object initializers all over the place. So that's mine.
So is this the step over properties and operators that you're referring to?
That is it.
So to go to that, you would go to your debug menu, options and settings, and then under general, you will find step over properties and operators, and then in parentheses, managed only.
Yep. So when you check that, actually check it, don't uncheck it, it will let you go through each one individually. Yeah.
I thought it was skipping.
That's why it's not very clear.
Yeah, it's the check is step over properties and operators. So you're saying that you want to because it was default checked on mine.
I can't
Maybe
remember.
that's a Studio 2013 feature that it's default checked.
That might be it. Mine's 2012.
There's definitely some default changes.
Oh,
yeah. So checking means that you actually get to go through each one of them. If I remember right. Yeah, it says step over, which seems unclear, and that's why this was sort of muddy.
Huh.
Yeah, we'll find. We'll have a little screenshot there in the show notes.
Yeah.
All right, and also I wanted to throw out. I guess it's kind of recommending the competition in a way, but there's two podcasts that I've discovered in the last 2 months, and I finally just caught up on both of them. But they're both really excellent. The first is the Full Stack podcast, and this is really cool because you got one guy who works on the server side and one guy who works on the front end, and they kind of share their perspective or they talk about different topics from both of their respective perspectives. So that's really cool. And also the John Morris show, who he ends up talking a lot about. He does these really cool monologues, kind of about things in the coding world from kind of like a freelancer position, but it's often the kind of things that are like around coding that's not hung up in like the semicolons and that sort of thing. So he's going to talk a lot about like motivation and learning new skills and that sort of thing. And it's just a really cool podcast. So I wanted to give those guys shout outs. So go download.
Yeah, I'm adding that right now. So, all right. So with that, we'll be putting the links in the show notes, and be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, and more using your favorite app. And be sure to give us reviews as well. We really appreciate those. Those go a long way to help us out.
Thank you, Johnny Moniker.
Oh, and also the actual web or the page for this particular one will be www.codingblocks.net/episode10. So be sure to check that out. And contact us with a question or a topic. If you leave your name and preferred method of shout out, be it website, Twitter, whatever, we'll be sure to mention you on the podcast so you get some love there. And please do leave us a review on iTunes. If you do that and we see that, you might even get a little bit more love on the show. So and also on Stitcher. And
send us your feedback, questions, and rants to email address comments@codingblocks.net. And make sure you follow us on Twitter at Coding Blocks and tweet us your links and articles and anything cool you find, and we'll share it on the show and give you some props.
Yeah.
So this John Morris, there's actually 2 John Morris podcasts.
Yeah, that was actually really annoying because I
John Morris Show, and then there's the John Morris Show, and it's the John Morris Show that is specific to coding.
Right, and I found him, I think, on Stitcher initially, and then I went to iTunes and I downloaded the wrong one, and I was very confused.
Yeah, because that's going to be a ESPN broadcaster that you'd get from that one.
Right, yeah, very different. And also,
the coding might be talked about a little bit less than the ESPN one.
Right, and I could be wrong, but
it's really
I think
coding light.
The Full Stack podcast is actually not on Stitcher, so that's unfortunate for me because I've really become addicted to Stitcher. So, oh well.
Is that a JetBrains product?
That's it. There are a few products I like that JetBrains doesn't make. Well, I guess that about wraps it up, guys. We got about an hour left till I turn into a pumpkin. So, have a good night.
No, wait! Before we wrap up, though, our next show is going to be on creation patterns. Yeah, so we've got so Outlaw's doing the.
Oh no, we're all doing them. It's not like I'm on my own.
But which one?
I'm coming to the defense of my boy Singleton because everybody's on him about, oh, you're an anti-pattern.
Everyone, you mean me?
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, you know what? F that. That's my boy Singleton. Don't be messing with him.
Oh, I just typed in here Singletons are in Google.
Oh man.
Evil, bad, pathological liars.
That's my favorite.
I read that article actually. That was a good one.
And then Joe has got. Wow, that's awesome! It really does say pathological liars.
I wasn't kidding.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I kind of like. I don't know. I guess the prototype pattern.
No, wait.
That's your favorite pattern in the creational series?
No, which one are you doing?
Well, so originally we talked about doing a pattern each, but then we kind of switched it up, so it was like, just the creational patterns. But now there's too many creational patterns for us. I didn't think.
No. We'll spread that across multiple episodes. So the very next one though. So Outlaw's doing Singleton. Joe's doing
factories.
No, that's mine. I got the factory.
Oh, you set me up here. All right, then we're running. I guess I got Builder.
All right, fair enough. Yeah. We'll all talk about it.
And I'm feeling great about it. Apparently.
So definitely check back with us and subscribe to us because we've got some cool stuff. And the cool thing about this next series of podcasts that we're going to be doing is they're going to be language agnostic. They won't matter, right? I mean, this is the same type of design patterns that you would see in Java, C#, whatever. It's going to be out there. So, that's a wrap.
But not in Objective-C.
Apparently nothing good happens at Objective-C.
They've transcended.
All right. Yeah.